Good day to all. The topic of my lecture is on design for manufacturing and assembly. I am Dr. S. Vinod, working as assistant professor in the Department of Production Engineering, National Institute of Technology, Tiruchirappalli. The presentation overview will be on discussing the objectives of DFMA, what is the need for applying DFMA, then DFMA method, DFMA guidelines, DFMA examples, and other issues associated with the DFMA, and finally the product assemblability and disassemblability of a cam operated rotary switch as an illustration. When we discuss the impact of DFM on product development process, basically the product development process includes the phases such as planning, concept development, system level design, detailed design, testing and refinement, and production ramp up. Among these phases, DFM emphasizes the manufacturing issues more at the system level and detailed design. Then successful deployment of DFM results in lower production cost without sacrificing product quality. The key intent of design for manufacturing and assembly is to consider the manufacturing issues and the complexity at the design phase. Thereby, those issues could be remedied at the design stage. Thereby, the manufacturability and assembly will be easier, for which DFMA has certain proven guidelines. Those guidelines need to be applied by the designer at appropriate phases for ensuring the manufacturability and assemblability of products. So, why DFM is needed? DFM facilitates manufacturing through certain means. First, for ensuring shortest processing time for both manufacturing and assembly, reducing the cost associated with manufacturing and assembly, ensuring the reproducibility of parts and product, then quality improvement as well reliability improvement. When we try to discuss on the objectives of design for manufacture and assembly, it enables material and process selection considering their impact on design, process planning, as well simplification of the design. Simplification in the sense without compromising on functionality of the design, then cost and time estimation from manufacturing and assembly viewpoint, then considering the product maintainability, which is one of the very important issue, and considering the product packaging and handling issues. So, when we look about the methods to implement DFM, there are three methods. First one is to organize the DFMA through cross-functional teams. Basically, this is a cross-functional teamwork including the expertise from design, manufacturing, and other divisions of the organization. And through the cross-functional teams, how the DFMA could be organized. Second is about there are certain specialized guidelines being developed, and the deployment of those guidelines will facilitate manufacturing and assembly. And third one is through the Boothroyd and Dewhurst procedure for executing DFMA methodology. So, when we look about the overall scheme of DFM, it starts with a proposed design for which the manufacturing costs need to be estimated, followed by reducing the cost of components, reducing the cost of assembly, reducing the cost of supporting elements of production, then considering the impact of DFM on other factors, then recomputing the manufacturing cost. On recomputation, if it is found to be good enough, we go for accepting the design. Otherwise, the process need to be iterated and further proceeded in subsequent steps. When we try to estimate the manufacturing cost for any manufacturing system, it includes certain key inputs in terms of raw materials, labor, as well as the purchased and bought out components, including the equipment, information, and other tooling required for manufacturing. Also the energy and auxiliary supplies and services, for which the outcome of a manufacturing system is the product. As well, there are certain waste that are being generated, and there is a greater emphasis on reducing the waste associated with the manufacturing. So, when we look about the manufacturing cost, it includes the cost estimation at the component level. There are certain standard and custom parts, and at assembly level we have labor, the equipment and tooling cost elements. Then we do have certain overhead costs. So manufacturing cost implies the sum of all the costs required for processing the products. So when we look about the manufacturing cost, it has two major elements: fixed cost and variable cost. Fixed cost is concerned with determining the cost incurred in a predetermined amount regardless of the number of units manufactured, whereas variable cost is concerned with the cost that is being incurred in a direct proportion to the number of units produced. So when we try to analyze the ways to reduce the cost of components, the first aspect to be focused is on understanding the process constraints as well the corresponding cost drivers. Second, we can focus on redesigning the components by eliminating the unnecessary process steps which involves re-engineering the process. Third is to select the appropriate economies of scale for the part process. Economies of scale implies that the unit cost of a product comes down as the production volume is being increased. Then as well by standardizing the components and process, which could be facilitated through the concepts of group technology as well mass customization. Mass customization is one of the important aspect which most of the product manufacturing process are possessing their characteristics. It implies that a variety of products can be produced, but still the unit cost of a product could be brought down. Although the individual product volume of the product variant may be low or high, but in a sum the total production volume will be higher, as a result of which we are trying to bring down the cost. And most of the manufacturers, they are being forced to adopt the mass customization paradigm. The reason being the customers' preferences are varying and the entire product design and development process need to be tuned according to the varied preferences of the customers. Very good example being the consumer electronics domain, which includes the mobile phone, laptops, and televisions likewise, where the preferences of the customers are keep changing and the product life cycles are becoming very short. Then the third mean is to reduce the cost of assembly. That could be done by computing the design for assembly index, which implies the equation for design for assembly index is an indication for design efficiency, which is the product of theoretical minimum number of parts multiplied by the basic assembly time for a part whole divided by estimated total assembly time. So when we discuss on theoretical minimum number of parts, normally it is being determined based on the part that need to move relative to the rest of the parts in a product assembly and be made of a different material rather than the rest of the parts for certain physical reasons, or it has to be separated from the assembly from viewpoint of repair or replacement. The second means is by integrated parts, which has certain advantages and disadvantages. So here the integrated parts will have minimal assembly task and it will be less expensive to fabricate, but the drawback being it conflicts with other sound approaches and always it may not be a wise strategy. But still the manufacturers are going in for integration of the parts to enjoy certain advantages associated with the strategy. Then the third means is to maximize ease of assembly, which includes certain key points starting from inserting the part from the top of the assembly, that is the normal preferred direction, assemble the part with a single linear motion, make the part self-aligning as well self-orienting parts. Thereby the issues associated with orientation and alignment could be minimized upon, and parts normally it has to be designed in such a way it should require only one hand for assembly and there should be no requirement for the special tools, and it has to be assembled with the existing tools. Then the next issue is about by considering the customer assembly, because customer accepts certain assembly, we have to design the products in such a way the customers will be able to assemble and disassemble them with minimal effort, and as the customers are likely they may ignore the direction and corresponding instructions to be provided, and the product design should be made that it will facilitate the assembly from customers' viewpoint. Then the fourth one is about reducing the cost of the supporting elements of production, which includes minimizing the system complexity that could be done by analyzing the key inputs and outputs as well the transformation process, thereby the systemic complexity could be minimized. Second is about error proofing. Error proofing is one of the very interesting aspect with the product design. It is also called mistake proofing or poke-yoke in Japanese terms, which implies that as a customer or a user, even if they tend to make any mistakes, the system or the product should not allow the user to commit such mistakes. One fine example of the error proofing we could see in the mobile SIM card, where a chamfer is being provided at one end that will facilitate the user to position the SIM card in the appropriate direction. There are numerous examples available to substantiate the error proofing concepts with the product design, and it is one of the key elements every designer need to focus as a part of product design and development. Then the fifth issue is about considering the impact of DFM on decisions on other factors. The other factors include the development time, development cost, the product quality, as well the external factors. So now we have completed the discussion on the DFME method. Next we will move on with discussing certain key guidelines of DFME. The first guideline being simplifying the design, that is minimizing the number of parts. So here simplification of design implies that we should simplify the design considering the functionality of the parts. So there should be no violation of the functionality of the parts, in such a way the design to be simplified. Second one is about using the modular design. Okay. Nowadays we could see that in a product assembly, few components are being put together as a module, thereby during it facilitates not only the assemblability, also during maintenance or repair that module could be removed and the next subsequent module could be inserted, thereby it facilitates in multifold way. Then the third one is about using the standard components. As far as possible in a product assembly, we should focus on using the standard components. That's the reason most of the elements are getting standardized. So the standard elements would facilitate the manufacturing as well the assembly. Then the next guideline is about designing the parts for multi-use. Nowadays there is a greater concern for designing the parts such a way it will be capable of fulfilling certain multifunctional aspects. So in the design we should incorporate certain features, thereby it could be used for multiple functions as well multiple utilities. The next guideline, interesting guideline, is about integrate the design. That means it's concerned with integrated parts and integrating the design. Very good example for this guideline is we either in the earlier phase we have the mobile phone charging cable as well the data cable as two different cables, but now we have both are being integrated, and with a single cable we will be able to fulfill those two functions. This guideline is also called the amalgamation of the design. Now the next guideline is about differentiating between similar parts, where the non-geometrical features need to be differentiated by means of appropriate color coding. And the next guideline is about designing for stability. So normally as a designer, the wide and the stable parts need to be put at the bottom, and all other parts need to be positioned on the top of the wider part, thereby the stability of the design could be ensured. The next guideline is about minimizing the assembly directions. As discussed earlier, the preferred direction is from the top direction. That is the preferred direction, and as far as possible we should focus on a single assembly direction for assembling the parts. The next guideline is about avoiding the separate fasteners as well as minimizing the number of fasteners in the usage. It will facilitate the maintainability as well the assembly of the parts. The next guideline is about designing the parts by means of eliminating the unnecessary process steps, which include re-engineering the process and identifying the unnecessary steps and designing the parts in such a way that it will overcome the unnecessary parts, which could be done through value stream mapping and value analysis methods, where the process steps from viewpoint of customer will be analyzed, and those process steps which doesn't add value from the viewpoint of customer will be eliminated. These are certain guidelines of DFMA. So now we could see some examples of DFMA, whereas in the first example is about simplifying the design, and the second one is about the modular design, where we could see the modules which could be replaced easily, and the third one is about the differentiating the non-geometrical parts by means of the color coding, and the one at the bottom left side is avoiding the separate fasteners, and the one on the right side, the bottom, is about integrating the design, where we could see the complexity is being minimized. Further, in continuation with the DFMA guidelines, we could see in this slide certain guidelines for the injection molding, which is one of the plastic part manufacturing process, one of the prime process for manufacturing the plastic parts, where the sharp one at the left side we could see how the sharp corners are being avoided, where the high stress regions are being avoided thereby. Then one at the middle we could see where adequate draft angle has been provided for easier removal of the mold, and the one on the right side we could see as far as possible the thickness need to be maintained uniform. It will facilitate the manufacturability. So now we could see certain guidelines for the casting process, where the abrupt cross section changes in the cross sections are being avoided. Also, the wall thickness need to be maintained uniform from casting viewpoint. Next, we will go through certain design guidelines for machinability. The one on the left side, which shows instead of the top one is the problem with the top design has been remedied, the one at the bottom, where we could see on the left side top it is a task of creating the grooves in the bush. Instead of creating those kind of grooves in the bush, we can transfer those kind of features to the shaft. Their creation of these kind of features in the shaft would be easier rather than creating in the bush, which is nothing but a hole. The next illustration which we could see on the right side, it shows it is nothing but a kind of a top and bottom die, which is referred to as strap and eccentric. In the one at the left, that recess is being provided in the top part, that has been remedied in the one at the right, where we could see that recess is being provided in the eccentric. From gravity viewpoint, those kind of recesses need to be provided in the bottom part of the design. All these two guidelines pertains to simplification of the work. Now, in this slide depicts the designing to facilitate minimum machining. Okay, in the left extreme you could see the kind of a collar which is being created in the bush. It is basically a hole based part which has been remedied subsequently, where in the second one we could see a collar which is being created on two equal shafts, and in the third example the collar is being created between two unequal shafts, and in the fourth one the collar is being welded onto the shaft. Thereby the machining is being minimized in the second, third and fourth variants. This slide depicts how the machined areas, size of machined areas could be reduced. The one on the left side you could see the machined area has been reduced. It is an example for machined component, and on the right side you could see the machined area is being minimized on the bottom side, which is a cast component, but this has to be done without compromising the functionality of the parts. This slide depicts how the extra work could be avoided. The example one which is being provided on the top, it shows the depth of the bosses are unequal, whereas in the next subsequent variant the depth of the bosses has been made uniform, thereby the extra work is being avoided. The example which is being shown at the bottom, you could see on the left side a sloped support is being provided, whereas the one on the right side we could see the sloped support has been made a straight support. So all this guideline also we have to incorporate judiciously without compromising the functionality of the parts. This guideline is about designing for clampability. Okay, the one example which is being shown on the left and the center, we could see the clamping phase is not sufficient. In the left one, the clamping phase is being ensured on the bottom variant. Similarly, in the middle example, the depth of such kind of a feature is being increased, thereby the clamping could be ensured. And the one example which is being shown on the right bottom, the 3-point lug support has been provided to facilitate clampability. The next example is about designing for accessibility. The one at the left, it is very difficult to access the parts, mainly to remove the parts with the arrangement which is being shown in the left, whereas that has been remedied using the center one, where we can through the area which is we can even use the screwdriver and we can remove the bolts and the nut arrangement for accessing the parts. And the third one, it has been simplified further. Instead of a bolt and nut arrangement, a cap screw arrangement has been done, which facilitates the accessibility. The next guideline is about designing for ease of assembly. The one on the left, you could see a centering spigot is being provided to facilitate assembly, and the example which is being shown on the right side, you could see it is the case of joining two parts, two plates kind of a thing. The one which is being shown on the top, you could see that the small circles represent the dowel pins. Okay, if the dowel pins are being provided as shown on the top, it is very difficult to ensure the alignment of the parts. The same has been remedied on the bottom, where if we could see the dowel pins are being provided across the diagonal, thereby the exact alignment and assemblability of the parts could be ensured. In this example, okay, in the one on the left, it shows the left extreme. It is very difficult to insert the kind of a shaft into the bush, whereas that has been remedied in the center, where we can see the edges are being beveled. The beveled edges facilitate the insertion of the bush, insertion of the shaft into the bush. The example which is being shown on the right side, it is nothing but a task of inserting a long screw into a drilled hole. Okay, the one prior to the right side, if you could see, it is very difficult to insert the long screw into the drilled hole, which has been remedied by a version which is shown on the right extreme, where a counter sunk is being provided. Counter sinking is nothing but a tapered enlargement of a drilled hole, whereby the insertion of the long screw into the drilled hole has been facilitated. These are certain guidelines where we have seen the proven guidelines for design for manufacturing and assembly. Next, we will go through certain examples of DFME. This is an example which clearly shows a before-after scenario of DFM, where we could see on the right side the number of parts are being minimized, as well the complexity of the design has been ensured, that has been minimized, thereby the manufacturability and assembly will be ensured. This is one of the standard example which is being given in the literature to depict the DFM. Again, this is a second example for DFM study, which is nothing but a case of a motor drive gearbox, where we could see on the left side a complex design which has been remedied, and the modified version is being shown on the right side, where the total complexity with the design has been minimized with reduction in the parts. From these two examples, we could clearly observe the complexity with the design has been minimized, and the design, assembly has been made simpler, and the cost reduction will happen, and the quality improvement will be there, and the manufacturers of these products will occupy the good market position in the markets. This is again an next example for DFME. The design improvement is being shown in 5 stages. The one on the left extreme, we could see 3 parts are there. This requires a screwdriver and careful alignment need to be ensured. It's a time consuming task. Next, the second phase, same 3 parts, they require a rivet gun. Alignment is not as delicate and the assembly time will be lesser. And we could see in the middle, that is on the third phase, again it is from 3 parts it got reduced to 2 parts. It is an integrated fastener and cradle arrangement where it requires machine to secure the fastener head. That has been remedied further in the 4th phase. It is the same arrangement, integrated fastener and cradle arrangement. It requires machine to press the part into the place, which has been further modified in the 5th phase where we could see hand pressed, it could be hand pressed into the place. That does not require even a machine for pressing. As a result of these 5 steps in the DFMA study, the product cost got reduced, as well the assembly time got reduced significantly. This is a very classical example for DFMA. The same as I told earlier, a motor drive assembly we could see in a better enhanced version. This is the proposed design, this is the existing design of a motor drive assembly, which looks complex. There are more number of parts. The same has been remedied. This is a redesigned version of a motor drive assembly following the DFA principles, where we could see the reduction in the number of parts and the minimization of the design complexity without compromising the function of the product. It has been done very systematically and is one of the classical example of the DFA. This is a summary table which clearly shows the various parts involved in the motor drive assembly. It shows the theoretical part count, the assembly time, as well the assembly cost. As discussed earlier, the equation to calculate the DFA index or design efficiency is nothing but the product of theoretical number of parts multiplied by the basic assembly time, that is being normally taken 3, whole divided by the total time taken for the assembly. So in this case, that is for the proposed design, it is about the design efficiencies of the order of 7.5% with the assembly time being 160 seconds. The analysis we can see for the modified version of the motor drive assembly after redesign, where we could see the design efficiency got improved to 26% from 7.5%, as well the assembly time got reduced to 46 seconds from 160 seconds with the reduction in assembly cost. Now this slide clearly shows the comparison of parts between the proposed design and the redesign of the motor drive box, where the cost being incurred and the total reduction in cost are being shown systematically. So with these examples, now let us try to discuss what are all the other issues associated with DFMA. So as a designer, while designing any component, certain key issues we need to take care as a part of the DFMA. The first one being the raw material, second the compliance with the customer requirements, third being manufacturing process, fourth quality parameters, fifth ease of assembly, and the sixth one is about the safety. We'll discuss one by one the issues. The first one being the raw material. The designer need to select the raw material which could be easily procured, and the raw material being selected has to comply with all the design criteria being stipulated, and we should focus on the optimum cost of the raw material. So certain design criteria that need to be considered while selecting the raw material include ease of availability, ease of manufacture, optimum cost, long life, safety aspects, and so on. Second is about compliance with the customer requirements. A very important attribute of a product designer is to have a clear understanding of what the customer expects. The customers expect the accurate compliance with what they require. Even the over specification, even when we try to over design, providing more than what the customer requirements, even that is not desired, because exact compliance with what the customer expects is one of the very important aspects. As product designer, we know very important process in the product design is to have a clear understanding of what the customer expects, and appropriately it need to be translated into engineering characteristics for further deployment. Even quality function deployment, we know pretty well, it is a widely used technique for translating the customer requirements into engineering characteristics. The third is about the manufacturing process. So we know pretty well the manufacturing process will be decided based on the customer requirements. Say for example, in a customer in a drawing being given by the customer, they will indicate the surface finish that has to be attained. So that is a key indication through which we try to select an appropriate manufacturing process pertaining to that particular requirement. So here very important aspect is that appropriate selection of manufacturing process is very important, because based on the drawing the total target cost is being fixed, and as a manufacturing engineer, from the customer requirements appropriately the design requirements will be evolved, and from the design requirements the manufacturing process will be selected, and basically it is a cross-functional teamwork which involves the designer and the manufacturing engineer, and appropriate selection of the manufacturing process need to be done by a cross-functional team. Also we need to focus on, from an assemblability aspects, interchangeability of assembly is very important for the product design. So what, as a manufacturing engineer, when we look about the criteria that need to be considered while selecting the manufacturing process, starts from optimum allocation of the tolerance, then capability of the machine, better tool life, less wastage, and there should be minimal pollution effect and safer handling. The next issue is about the quality parameters. So very important aspect is the quality of the product which is being designed. So nowadays we do have sophisticated facilities for checking the quality parameters rather than the gauge based inspection. Once the product which is being designed and manufactured, all the quality parameters could be tested with a single shot, and the compliance with quality could be ensured upon. The next one is about the ease of assembly. So from assemblability viewpoint, the fitment between the parts is very important. So the fitment is nothing but the functional relationship between the parts. Selecting the right fit between the parts and ensuring the right fit is very important, and we need to go for using the standard equipment for the tightening bolts and nuts. As well, as far as possible, we should avoid selective assembly and we should go for interchangeable type of assembly, which is recommended for the product designers. So now we have completed the issues associated with the DFMA. Now we shall see certain key insights on what kind of the insights the DFM and DFMA for electronics and ICs. So when you look about the trends the electronics manufacturing industry is witnessing, it starts from increasing complexity. One base design is being used for multiple variations of PCBs, a build on demand instead of the warehousing concept, then shorter time to pocket and the shorter product life cycle, and we have to go for a reduction in the cost as we are facing a globalized manufacturing scenario. And when we try to go through what are all the key aspects to ensure successful manufacturing, the first one is about accessibility to the comprehensive data. Second, powerful analysis and communication tools, yield improvement, the data ownership and revision control, as well as management of configurations and reconfigurations are very vital. Based on a survey conducted by Hewlett-Packard, certain statistics are being provided and they looks interesting. 60% of the overall product cost is determined by the decisions that are being made in the early phases of the design process. About 75% of manufacturing cost is determined by the design drawings as well the specification. For 70 to 80% of all product defects are related to design issues. These kind of inferences being derived exactly stipulate what is the need for the DFM and DFMA, which is focused on minimizing the intricacies at the manufacturing phase and trying to bring those complexities and the intricacies at the design stage, visualize those manufacturing complexities, minimize them, make the design to shoot manufacture. That is the core intent of DFM and DFMA. So when we look about the DFM gap with a simple illustration, when we see on the x-axis the increasing trends year-wise, and on the y-axis we could see the complexity which is gradually increasing. So there are multiple variants of the products being emerged, and without deploying the DFM and DFMA, it will be very difficult for the product designers and developers to develop the products. That is the reason the DFM and DFMA guides the designers and the product developers to design the products in such a way the manufacturability and the assemblability issues could be overcome, and the drastic reduction in the time as well as cost could be reduced, because most industries are facing time compression and the product life cycles are becoming very shorter. To cope with this scenario, the DFM and DFMA is very important. So the design for manufacturability includes certain other issues associated with designing for fabrication, designing for testability, and designing for electrical integrity of the parts from viewpoint of electronics and other electronics related manufacturing. So here the goals of DFM from the viewpoint of electronics and electronics manufacturing, when we look about it, it includes improvement the product quality and try to increase the manufacturing flexibility and the responsiveness, and reduce the new product introduction cycle, reduce manufacturing cycle time, and reduce the product time to market, because that is one of the very important aspect the manufacturers are facing, how quickly we are able to convert the concept idea into the product and how quickly the products are being released to the market. It's one of the competitive performance of the manufacturers. The next one is about cost reduction and minimal impact to the design schedule as well as the design efforts. That's the reason we are focusing on concurrent way of designing and developing the products rather than the sequential thing. And design for manufacturing and assembly is an excellent example for concurrent engineering, where we are forecasting the manufacturing complexities at the design stage. We are minimizing such complexities and we are making the design to shoot manufacturing. So this is with this we have discussed certain key insights for DFM and DFMA for electronics and ICs related manufacturing. The next one is about, we'll be seeing an disassembly task of a cam operated rotary switch. This switch has numerous applications. We all might have seen the switch on the panel boards, where the applications of the switch include it functions as ammeter reading the current between the two phases, or voltmeter reading the voltage between the phases, or for phase changeover applications. I want to change from one phase to next phase. This switch performs the function. This exploded view of the switch could be seen in this slide, where on the left extreme you could see the knob which will drive the corresponding knob shaft, which will actuate the cam, which will make and break the contacts, and the switch will perform its intended function. Next we will be going through the disassembly task as well the reassembly of this cam operated rotary switch. Thank you.
Yes, good morning to all. We welcome you all for the Rapid Manufacturing Lab located in the Department of Production Engineering, National Institute of Technology, Tiruchirappalli. So here in this laboratory we have facilities 3D printer, rapid prototyping machine, as well the modules for life cycle assessment. Now we are going to see the disassembly and assembly of the cam operated rotary switch. As you could see, this is the cotton box and this is the cam operated rotary switch. It's having 32 ampere cam operated rotary switch. Now I will briefly explain you the features of the cam operated rotary switch, followed which we shall moving for the disassembly and reassembly of the cam operated rotary switch. As you could see, this is the knob. This red part is nothing but the knob, which is used to actuate the knob shaft for performing the function. The knob will be connected next to the front plate, raster plate and script plate. This yellow color part represents the front plate, and followed by these plates we have the mounting plate. Now we shall see the features of the cam operated rotary switch. As we could see, this red color part represents the knob, which is the actuating member for the rotary switch, which is used to drive the knob shaft, which is located internal to the switch. And this yellow color part represents the front plate. Next to the front plate we have the script plate and raster plate arrangement. On the script plate, this markings such as thread, amperage and other things are being indicated. Next to the front plate we have the mounting plate, and the panel will come here in this portion. So you will be normally able to see this kind of a switch, only the front part of the switch that is located in the front of the panel, and all these parts will be in the rear side of the panel. We could see these two being the contact stages, and this is a cover plate. Inside the contact stage we will be able to see the contacts and the cam mechanism. The working of this switch is nothing but we will be rotating the knob or the handle for the switch. Once it is being rotated, it will actuate the knob shaft, which is located here. This knob shaft will rotate the cam. The cam will make and break the contacts. Accordingly, the switch will execute its function. So these kind of the application of these kind of switches include ammeter reading, voltmeter reading, that is to read the current between the two phases as well the voltage between the two phases, or for changing one phase to the next phase. These are all the wide application of the switches, and the switches has wide applications starting from the domestic sector, and even in the railways very big switches we can see for performing the actuating mechanism. Now I request my research scholar Mr. Ben Rubin to perform the disassembly and assemblability of this cam operated rotary switch.
Rotary switch. So now I am going to disassemble each and every one of the part. Initially I am starting with the knob. So this is the knob and I am going to disassemble it. And now I am going to disassemble this part using a star type screwdriver. Initially I am going to start with disassembling of the knob. So this the red color part is the knob and I am going to disassemble it right now.
As we could see, this is the knob, which is one of the driving member. So for low amperage switches we'll be having the knob, and for high amperage switches we'll be having the handle, as the torque requirement will vary from application to application. So here the torque requirement seems to be the lesser. We have this kind of a knob. As you could see, the knob is ergonomically designed so that as the user will be able to rotate the knob easily with little effort. In such a way the knob design has been done, and this knob, as I told earlier, this being the knob shaft. This knob will actuate the knob shaft, which will drive the cams, which will make and break the contacts, and this switch will function. Now let us see the further disassemblability of the parts. So now, as we could see, this being the front plate assembly. So front plate assembly will have this yellow part being the front plate, and we could see a white color part that being the script plate, on which this amperage, the on off and other indications will be done. In between the front plate and the script plate we have one more part called raster plate. It is a kind of mating member between the front plate and the script plate. Now let us go through the further disassembly of the switch. we could see now, the various screws are being unscrewed, and we could see the internal parts of the switch. As we have discussed, this is nothing but the knob shaft, which will be driven by the knob, which will actuate the cam. We could see the cam being located in this part, and we could see the contacts being located here. This knob cam movement will make and break the contacts, and accordingly the switch will function. So this is nothing but a contact stage, which includes the cam and the corresponding fixed and moving contacts, and the number of this particular switch has 2 contact stages. Depending on the amperage and voltage requirement of the switch, the number of contact stages will vary from one assembly to the next assembly, and this is nothing but a cover plate. This cover plate is nothing but the total which is being connected through this kind of arrangement with the switch, and this will come at the rear portion of the switch. As we have discussed, the panel board will come in between the front plate and the mounting plate, and as a user normally we will be able to witness only this front portion of the switch, and all these parts will appear at the rear portion of the panel. So this is the working mechanism of this particular switch. Now let us go through the reassembly of the switch.
So initially the back plate should be fixed first. The supporting screws and nuts should be fixed with the main switch. So initially the supporting pad that is located between the 2 switches is being placed. So this is being supported by two supporting screws, and I am going to insert it now. And since it's a cross-headed screw, we are using a cross-type, star-type screwdriver for fixing this one. And in a similar manner, other supporting screws are to be fixed. So now the supporting screws are being fitted to this switch, and finally the knob should be fitted as the final part. So this knob should be connected with this part. So the panel is getting fixed, and finally the knob is being attached. So this is the final assembled view of the rotary switch after this assembly.
Many of the product design aspects are being addressed in the design of this cam operated rotary switch. As I told initially, the knob design is in such a way, it is ergonomically designed in such a way as the user will be able to apply the torque in a very easier way. The design of the knob facilitates the ease of application of torque. As well, the aesthetic aspect is being taken care. As we could witness, in between the front plate and the strip plate, we could see a raster plate. The raster plate is being primarily provided to improve the aesthetic appearance of the switch. Apart from that, many of the DFM and DFA guidelines what we have discussed during the presentation are being addressed in this switch design. Many parts are being integrated, and this integrated design will facilitate assembly. Also, this integrated design will facilitate ease of maintenance. Say for example, during the maintenance and the repair phase of the switch, the parts could be easily disassembled, as we have witnessed from the assemblability and disassemblability analysis. We could witness that the entire switch arrangement could be easily removed and it could be easily dismantled. So apart from this, majority of the parts of the switch are plastic injection molded, one of the primary process for manufacturing the plastic products, and all design guidelines pertaining to the injection molding have been taken care in this switch design. So hence this switch we have taken for demonstration is a very good potential candidate product for demonstrating the product design aspects as well the assemblability and disassemblability of the product design. Thank you.